Hi, and welcome to the 7th virtual information session hosted by Edmonton Elections. Today we're going to be discussing some Election Day reminders for the 2025 Edmonton election. Before we get into today's presentation, I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement. We meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and the Métis homeland, and I'd like to acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, in addition to Métis, Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. Through listening and learning, Edmonton Elections is working to deliver an election for Indigenous peoples and settlers from around the world who continue to be welcomed here and who call Edmonton home. My name is Brad Wells and I'm the Director for Edmonton Elections. I'm joined today by Aileen Giesbrecht, Returning Officer for the 2025 Edmonton election. Before we dive in, I want to let everyone know that this presentation will be available on our Edmonton election websites in the next day or so. There's lots of great information there, including links to past information sessions, so if you haven't yet, please head over to edmonton.ca/elections. Aileen, over to you to walk through the topics we're about to cover.
Thank you so much, Brad, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. So we're going to cover off a few Election Day reminders. Our presentation is going to cover off what to expect at a voting station, and we're going to talk about three main things. Number one, the neutrality of voting stations and what that means. What you as a voter can expect to fill out when you come to a voting station. And the third thing we're going to cover off is scrutineers, who they are, what they can do, and what they need to know. The last thing we're going to cover off is the counting of ballots, what the process is going to look like, and approximately what the reporting of the results is going to look like. When are the results going to become public? And as always, we really do appreciate the questions from Edmontonians, so please email your questions for today's session at elections@edmonton.ca. I doubt we're going to be able to get through all of the questions, but don't worry, we do have a team that is out there responding to all of these emails. So just before we begin with today's presentation, I just want to provide some context that sets Edmonton Elections is the nonpartisan entity within the Office of the City Clerk. Edmonton Elections is the one that plans and runs the election for the mayor and 12 councillor races for the City of Edmonton. We also run the elections for 9 trustees for the Edmonton Public School Board and 7 trustee positions for the Edmonton Catholic Separate School Division. And a friendly reminder, we're only running 6 trustee races as 1 candidate was acclaimed last week. So the last couple of weeks have been extremely busy for our team. Nomination day last Monday saw the final candidates submit their nomination papers to our team. The withdrawal period did come and go, and there were 0 withdrawals, so there were 0 changes. And if anybody is still looking for the official list of candidates for all 4 of our races, you can find that online. Now that nominations are closed, we are officially in the final period for the election. Friendly reminder, there are 3 ways to cast your ballot. You can show up at an advance voting station, which begins next Tuesday and runs until Saturday, so that's October 7th to 11th. There is a voting station in each ward open from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. each day. Election Day, as everybody knows, is October 20th, and you can cast your ballot between the hours of 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. And lastly, you can also still cast and request a special ballot, otherwise known as a mail-in ballot. We did start accepting applications on August 1st. And we are also providing voting opportunities at more than 60 senior accommodation facilities across Edmonton, as well as hospitals and post-secondary institutions. Before I turn this over to Brad, though, I do want to just address the impact that the Canada Post service disruption has had on election operations. So there have been impacts, and I did talk about some of these yesterday with the media. The first thing is we were intending on sending out voter information cards to every household and every registered voter. So we were intending on printing about 800,000 of these cards. We have not yet done so, and it is unlikely that we are going to be able to print and distribute these through Canada Post because of the disruption. But don't worry, all of the information that was going to be printed on the cards is already available online. If you go to edmonton.ca/for-voters and click on our Where to Vote tool, you're going to be able to find all of the information you need to help yourself as well as your friends and neighbors, figure out what their voting plan is for advanced vote or on election day. We are also working with Edmonton Public Libraries to make sure that we can put generic voter information at their local locations, as well as providing the same information in printed form at City of Edmonton recreation centers. The second impact the postal disruption has had is on our impact on special ballots. It is clear right now with the strike, we are not able to send out packages through the mail. However, Edmonton Elections is still providing special ballots. If you have already applied for a special ballot and you are able to come in and pick up your package, we have already extended our office hours from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday and 9 to 4 p.m. on Saturdays. You are welcome to come to our headquarters. You don't need to call or email us in advance. We have staff waiting to support you. Before you pop down to the office, if you are able, we do strongly suggest you check on our website to see if your package is already ready for pickup. If you're not able to come down, and we understand not every Edmontonian can come and pick up their package, you are able to designate somebody to pick it up on your behalf. You just have to let us know in advance, and you can reach us at a special dedicated email address called specialballots with an S at edmonton.ca. We are also working with a local alternative service provider to get special ballots to Edmontonians who are not able to pick their ballot up. We are working on those logistics, and don't worry, if you can't pick your ballot up and you have already submitted a request or you intend on requesting a special ballot, we are going to work with you to make sure that we can have that dropped off at your home for you. So again, anybody who's able to pick up their special ballots, we've got dedicated parking right outside our Edmonton election headquarters. It's very simple. Staff are waiting to help you. Please pop in and pick up your ballot package. If you are able to as well, you can vote on site. We've got a secure location for you to vote and complete your package. If you do choose to take the package home and you can't make it back to Edmonton Elections, as of today, you can drop off your special ballot package once it is completed to a member of our Edmonton Elections team. That is between the hours of 9 and 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. You can either call the office of the city clerk, or we have a dedicated phone set up here in the main entrance of City Hall. When you get here, just pick up the phone. You'll be automatically connected with our team in Edmonton Elections, currently based within the office of the city clerk, and you can leave your ballot with us in a secure location, and we'll make sure it gets back to the Edmonton Election Warehouse on your behalf. Obviously, this whole situation is quite fluid. If anything changes, we will be communicating that in our website. So please always check back to the website for the most up-to-date information. Okay, enough for me, and now I'm going to turn it over to Brad, who's going to provide some election day reminders.
Thanks, Aileen. The theme for this session is reminders, and what better place to begin than at the voting station? Voting stations are governed under the Local Authorities Election Act. This legislation stipulates that voting stations must remain nonpartisan and neutral. So what does this mean? A voting station is for voting, nothing else. In some cases, as a translator or through vouching, you can help someone vote. And if you're a part of a campaign, you can help eligible voters by transporting them to their voting station. Whatever you do, neutrality principles must be followed. That means no to anything partisan or persuasive. You cannot canvass for votes, display campaign materials such as signs, buttons, or shirts, or do any other activity that is intended to sway or influence voters within a voting station. A second thing that you can expect at a voting station is paperwork. When you come in, you'll need to fill out a form which will confirm which ballots you are eligible to receive related to school boards. If you are not one of the 650,000 Edmontonians on the permanent electors register, you will be added to the register before receiving your ballots. You'll be given 3 ballots, one for mayor, one for councillor, and one for the respective school trustee election. Back over to you, Aileen.
Thanks, Brad. So now I want to spend the next couple of slides talking about who and what are scrutineers. So scrutineers are a very important part of the democratic process. They represent a candidate. Scrutineers are permitted to observe the voting process. as well as observing the count process, which starts once voting ends. While scrutineers represent campaigns, they are not permitted to jeopardize the neutrality of voting stations. For instance, scrutineers must dress neutrally when they're in the voting station or the count center. So you can't wear campaign shirts or buttons or signs or any other items that express support or opposition to a particular candidate. So if you're wondering who can be a scrutineer, I'd say it's just about anybody, but you do have to be 18 years or older. You must be designated or appointed as a scrutineer by the candidate, and you can have this done either by signing the scrutineer declaration form, which is on our website, or another written documentation that provides authority from the candidate. And you also must not have had an election-related conviction within the last 10 years. So during voting hours, scrutineers may observe the voting process from a designated area within each of the voting stations. There is also going to be a designated time and location to observe the processing of returned special ballot packages. And after voting concludes at 8 p.m. on October 20th, scrutineers are permitted to watch the counting process. It's really important that you understand if you are sending a scrutineer to watch the counting, the scrutineers are not allowed to exit and then re-enter the building. Stations are locked down and closed once the counting process starts, and that's for security reasons. Scrutineers, as I've mentioned, can observe the counting of ballots, both at the count stations and count center. Scrutineers can make objections to how a ballot is being counted, but the decision to count a ballot and how it is being counted is left with Edmonton election staff. Scrutineers may also sign the ballot accounting form that our staff complete after counting is done. This is completely optional. And if scrutineers are still there when the ballot boxes are resealed, it is also optional for them to sign the boxes at that time. So some other really important scrutineer information. So for starters, only one campaign representative may be present at a voting station at one time. As we mentioned earlier, candidates need to have the designation of scrutineer form available online or its equivalent with them wherever they go. There is a second form at each voting station, so when a scrutineer shows up at a voting station, they need to identify themselves to an Edmonton election worker. They will then be invited to complete Form 16, which is the statement of scrutineer or official agent. Scrutineers must also clearly identify themselves, and Edmonton election staff will provide official scrutineer identification badges when you do enter the voting station. We also invite scrutineers to arrive a little bit earlier than the public at voting stations. So up to 30 minutes before a voting station opens for voting, opens to the public, scrutineers will be welcomed in to a designated area and they can watch the voting station being set up. When voting stations are open, scrutineers may leave and re-enter as many times as they would like. They're free to visit other voting stations as long as they provide their signed, designated scrutineer form. Again, as I've mentioned, once the voting station closes and we start the counting process, there is no re-entry, and this is for security reasons. The last 2 points I'll mention really go back to the idea that voting stations must remain neutral for all voters. So while inside the voting station, a scrutineer may observe the voting procedure, but they must not interact with the electors or interfere with the voting process. Scrutineers are also required to maintain the secrecy of the vote in the voting station. You cannot try and find out who an elector voted for or communicate any information learned at a voting station about a voter's intent. Scrutineers are not permitted to take photos, videos, or phone calls from inside the voting station. Okay, enough from me. Over to you, Brad.
Thanks, Aileen. As many of you are likely aware, provincial legislative changes mean that we can no longer use tabulators to count ballots. Votes in the 2025 Edmonton election will be counted by hand. Counting will take place in 2 location types on election day. The first is voting stations. At 222 stations across Edmonton, votes will be tallied on site after the voting station has closed. At our count centre, we will be counting all advance votes, special ballots, as well as our institutional votes, which are from senior accommodation facilities, hospitals, and post-secondary institutions. We'll begin counting shortly after voting stations close. We anticipate being able to complete counting of ballots at the voting stations on election night. We will continue counting at the count centre until 1 a.m. and then we'll shut down the count centre operations for the night. The count centre will resume operations at 9 a.m. on October 21. The changes mentioned in the last slide mean that Edmontonians can expect to hear results later than in previous years. As always, we will release results by race, by voting station, as soon as they become available. While some preliminary results will be available on election night, we currently anticipate that the preliminary count will not be counted until October 21, the day after Election Day. As required by legislation, official results for the 2025 Edmonton election will be released by noon on Friday, October 24. So while we've been chatting, we've been receiving a bunch of questions here. So if you're watching this live, there is still time for you to submit your questions to elections@edmonton.ca. If we don't get to it now, we'll be sure to get back to you in the coming days. So Aileen, we've had a question from a candidate. Where can I find out about the schedule for orientation for new councillors?
Great question. So we have talked a lot about voting, and we've talked a lot about what to expect on election day and beyond. So taking off my returning officer hat and putting on my city clerk hat, I'm happy to say if you have already subscribed to our newsletter in our August or September newsletter out to candidates, we did provide reference to a report that I provided City Council that included the anticipated onboarding and orientation schedule from October to December. And then at our last council meeting in September, also provided a public report with the full schedule that is being presented to council at its inaugural meeting for all the meetings that will be scheduled in 2026. Just want to take a moment to remind candidates that if you are successful in your race, that there is very limited time between election results being finalized on October 24th at 12 and the swearing-in ceremony that's the following Wednesday, which is October 29th. Swearing-in ceremony is then followed by the inaugural council meeting, and there is a very limited time period within the MGA that we can have those activities completed. So I suggest that when you are able, you or your campaign teams might want to take a look at those schedules just to help with your planning. But again, great question. Thank you.
Thanks, Aileen. We talked a little bit about the postal disruption and special ballots in this session. We've had a question come in that, can I just drop off my completed special ballot at an advance vote location or a voting station?
And again, another great question. I've actually had this question come in to me directly. So again, special ballots, while the ballots are the exact same ballots that you'll be receiving at advance vote or voting station, the process for special ballots and the tracking is a little bit different. And that's why ballots need to be returned to a member of the election team, and they cannot be dropped off at an advance vote or a voting station. There is a relationship between the ballots and the ballot boxes that these go into, and there's a separate process for counting. So again, as we've already talked about, the counting on election night, we will be doing counting of the voting stations of the ballots that are cast at that voting station. It's very important that we have all the special ballots returned by 7 p.m. on election night. Those will all then be transported for special counting at our count center. So again, if you have any questions about special ballots, please do give us a call or send us an email, and we will do our best to answer them. If you can pick up your special ballots and drop them off, great. If not, we will be using a third-party carrier to get those mail-in ballots delivered to your home. So thanks, another great question.
You've probably got this one a lot, Aileen. On election night, will I know who has won each race?
Yes, I would say this is probably one of the more popular questions I receive. At this point in time, I can't say for sure. There's going to be a lot of things that will impact how quickly we are able to count all of the ballots and get the results out. So it's not a yes and it's not a no. But I do want Edmontonians to know that we will be doing an accurate hand count of each ballot for each race, but I do expect the results to be slower for our unofficial election results than in previous years. I do think election day results will continue to trickle in probably up until midnight on election night, but we do have to take our time, and there is just a bit more due diligence that's required. We will have feed for the media so that they will be able to get the refreshed results as they are coming in. So as results come in, as they're verified and posted online, I would say the best place to get election information will be on our website. I don't anticipate having everything counted on the 20th. We are set up to come back on October 21st at 9 a.m. And I am optimistic by the end of the day on October 21st, we will have our preliminary count down, or completed, but official results do not come out until the Friday at 12. That's a legislative deadline.
Here's a question that's coming around scrutineers. If I'm running a campaign, what if I don't have enough scrutineers for every location?
So thanks for that question. So again, scrutineers are a really important part of the democratic process. It does provide an extra layer of transparency for candidates, but they are not a requirement. They are optional. So scrutineers are welcome, however many you have for each campaign, to show up at multiple voting locations throughout the day. But it is really important to understand that once we close the doors to the public and voting is completed and we start the count, there is no re-entry. Now, there are lots of guidelines and rules around scrutineers, so anybody who's looking for a bit more information, our election team has taken the legislation and turned it into a easy-to-read handout, which is available on the website. We are also shortly going to be sending an email out to all candidates and their campaigns, so please check your inbox for more information about scrutineers.
Thanks, Aileen. We also talked in this presentation a little bit about what is expected of a scrutineer at a voting station. So what happens if a scrutineer shows up to a voting station wearing campaign materials?
So I appreciate that question as well. So as much as scrutineers are welcome to attend the voting station, the ability for voters to show up and be free to cast their ballot without influence in a neutral environment is also extremely important to Edmonton elections. So if you are a candidate or a scrutineer, please make sure not to be wearing any campaign shirts or pins or paraphernalia. If you are, we're going to ask you to remove them. So again, the neutrality of voting stations isn't just a legislative requirement, it is foundational to the whole democratic process. So please understand the rules before you send your scrutineers out. And if you do have questions, look at our information on our website, and we will be sending out information to all candidates later this week.
Thanks, Aileen. That's all the time we have for questions today. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for showing up for Edmonton, whether you run, work, or vote in the 2025 Edmonton election. Find your voting station at edmonton.ca/for-voters. Opportunities for in-person voting will take place next week during advance vote from October 7 through to 11, as well as on election day. As always, there are multiple ways to stay connected with Edmonton elections. Follow Edmonton Elections social channels. You can always visit our website at edmonton.ca/elections. Email any questions that you may have to elections@edmonton.ca, and sign up for the Edmonton Elections e-newsletter for regular updates. Visit edmonton.ca/elections for the link to subscribe. And with that, thanks to everyone who joined us today, and we look forward to seeing you at a voting opportunity in the coming weeks.